Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about everything related to Muppets. The changes, the announcements, how we feel about it, and what we think will be coming down the road.
Hello, dreamers of all ages, and welcome to Catch Us at the Castle.
So the first thing that we need to talk about, Ed, is the announcement that happened last fall. We did get a pretty big announcement, a lot of big announcements at D23 last August. So many. I was rapidly taking notes. That was so fun to watch. But they didn't announce that Muppet Vision 3D would be closing during that time.
No.
We were all a little surprised to hear a little bit later that Muppet Vision 3D would be closing. So that announcement came to us in November that it would be closing come this spring, May, I believe is when June. June is when it closed, correct?
June.
Yeah, June is when it closed. And so everybody was really upset about that.
Yeah, I think we knew, like, it had been rumored for a long time that Rock and Roll Roller Coaster, that something was happening. And in fact, I think if you remember, I want to say it was beginning of 24, it shut down on the first day of the year for like 10 days. And there was all this rabid speculation. Oh my gosh, the Aerosmith didn't renew the rights and they can't reopen. And so we thought that was the end. And then it wasn't. But it sort of felt like Rock and Roller Coaster had an expiration date. We just didn't know what it was.
Yeah, it's true. And so shortly after the announcement that Muppets would be closing, we also found out that Rock and Roller Coaster would be rethemed to the Muppets, which is pretty exciting. It's something that I wanted to see for a really long time, and I was excited about it. We're going to talk more about all of our thoughts and opinions about this. I have a really hard time sharing opinions. We're trying to stick to the facts right now. So we did get the announcement of the changes, and there's always going to be change at Disneyland and Disney World. And so speaking of that, Ed, let's move into the history a little bit, because as you mentioned a few minutes ago, Muppet Vision 3D has not only been at Disney World.
Yeah, I learned something, researching for this episode. And I think you made a comment just now about things changing, always changing at Disney World. And man, but like that's something I always struggle with, because we always hear that was, something that Walt would have wanted, but he wasn't really around long enough to establish a pattern of wanting to continue to change, just because obviously he never got to see a lot of the creations in Florida during his lifetime. So it's always hard to know with some of these classic attractions if this was what he would have wanted. And a lot of people were really sad when Muppet Vision closed. But I mean, if we're being honest, the number of times I rode it over the years, the theater was rarely full, and there was, generally speaking, not a wait. And some of that might be generational. I mean, you and I come from a generation where the Muppets were a big part of our generation. And that was why it was such a big deal when Disney World announced this partnership with Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets, back in the late 80s, that they were essentially going to acquire these characters. Interestingly enough, this was the last big project Jim Henson was working on before he passed away. And so he actually never got to see Muppet Vision 3D open. He died about a year before it opened, which also led to some complications in terms of the deal wasn't fully closed, and they had to work all that out so that Disney could license the rights to the characters. The thing I learned when I researched was that there actually was a version of this at Disneyland, which I didn't know. You have a lot more experience at Disneyland than I do. And I just don't remember it being there, but it's apparently was there for about a decade.
Yeah, it was in California Adventure, probably from the time California Adventure
when it
opened.
Yep, it was opening activity, yep.
Yeah, and now it's the other 3D movie right now, that is an older one as well. In Disney World, you'll find it in the Magic Kingdom. The name is escaping me. Everybody listening is probably going wild right now because they can think of the name. Can you think of the name?
No, but I can
PhilharMagic. PhilharMagic. That's what's there right now.
Yeah.
Is PhilharMagic. So PhilharMagic did take the Muppet Vision 3D spot in California Adventure.
Yeah, so it had a dedicated theater in Hollywood Studios, sort of what I would say on the back lot side for folks who know Hollywood Studios back in the day, where Batu, the Star Wars land is now, used to be the backlot tour. It was where the oh gosh, was it the Addams Family Light show?
Osborne Family Light.
Osborne Family Lights. Gosh, I knew
Addams
it
Family
wasn't.
is something totally different.
I know. I knew Addams didn't sound right, but that light show took up, gosh, I mean, probably almost half of the park, that entire backlot area, and that was just on the backside of where Muppet Vision 3D was. So historically, we've seen lots of changes throughout the park. This area used to have a couple of retail stores around Muppet Vision 3D. There also used to be a Cars meet and greet right behind it that also closed. And so as each of those things closed, this area of the park became just a little bit less active and vibrant. There's a pizza place in the back corner that did okay business. The retail store that was back there used to sell Muppets gear. Then it pivoted to start selling annual pass gear, just a couple of times a year would open up as a pop-up. And then finally it shuttered its doors probably about 3 years ago during COVID, and I never saw it reopen after that. So Muppet Vision was definitely the anchor of that area right outside of Batu for a number of years. And sadly, there are two big gates now in front of the fountain that was the centerpiece of the plaza out in front of Muppet Vision 3D. But we know that we've got more coming, and we know that Rock and Roller Coaster will be rethemed. We've got a little over a year based on what their announced dates are. But, some of our friends were there for the final days. Things were very crowded. There was a bunch of Muppets gear, and there were a lot of people with really strong opinions about this. And I think, when we think about these things, you and I, having had a long history in the parks, I think, it's these bittersweet moments because we want to continue to see things change. But I'm really curious because I know we're going to talk through your theories on what's coming next. But how do you feel about Muppet Vision 3D being gone in its current iteration?
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting to me is I was at Disney World in October of last year in 2024, and we went and did Muppet Vision because someone in our group had never seen it before, and I was really surprised by that.
Yeah.
So we went and saw it, and we were the only people in the theater with one other group. And I remember thinking at that time, if this is the kind of attendance this ride is getting, like, it's on its way out.
Yeah.
Because they can't have that much space and only have a few people enjoying that a day. Literally, it would be a couple of handfuls of people a day that would see that attraction if what we were doing or what we saw is anything representative of what the overall outlook was at that time. We were there at a busier time of year, so it's not like crowd levels were extremely low and the parks were empty. That wasn't what it was. It's just not that highly of an attended ride. And I think that that's one of the things that as we talk about these attractions that we love and that we don't want to see go, if that's the case, then we have to go and use those attractions and view those attractions, ride the attractions, participate in them, whatever the case may be, as much as possible every time we're there. Otherwise, they will be on their way out. It's just the way Disney has to do it. The footprints of the park are only so big. And so that's how it has to go. So that was not surprising to me at all, that's the announcement that was made. I don't have a problem with change. I think I'm one of the few people that really is okay with the change in the parks. I like to see it. There haven't been too many things that they've brought in. There've been a handful of things that they've brought in that I've thought, what in the world? But most of the time I'm really happy with the change. And then when those things that I think about what in the world and they leave, I'm fine with that too. So it's all change is good. Yes, there are some attractions that I would be really, really sad to see go. And for me, I think a lot of people, what those core attractions are to us, the ones that are nostalgic that we would be really sad to go. I think it's different for everybody. So that's my thoughts on that. Small World for me would be the one that I would think like is a true iconic Disney ride that I would be really surprised and shocked if they ever took out.
Yeah, and that's still right. Still gets a decent amount of volume. I mean, certainly more than Muppet Vision 3D did. I'm torn. I mean, generally speaking, I lean more against change. I'm still, still processing the fact that Tom Sawyer's Island is going away. We took a trip down to do a last minute Sawyer voyage. I think so a couple of things. Like, I definitely agree with you on the number of people that were in Muppet Vision 3D. It hasn't been full the last handful of times I've done it, so I understand that. That being said, I think, when you think about theater attractions, they don't take up a ton of space. And so you could certainly put a better theater attraction there. But if you think about it, you've got Mickey Short's theater is up, further closer to the front of the park. And it's not a very big theater, and it's not a very big piece of land, if you will. Sort of, you got the Backlot Express pathway where Sci-Fi Theater is, and the ABC commissary restaurant. So I mean, like, it's the same thing here with this Muppet Vision 3D piece of real estate. You've got Batu right behind it, and then to the left of it, I don't know my cardinal directions, north, south, east, west here, but you've got the Star Tours ride. So you could certainly theme this as part of Star Tours if you wanted, or Star Wars or Batu or whatever, but you're not going to get a big attraction in this spot. There's not a ton of space. So I do understand the value of continuing to change and iterate. I'd say I have an incomplete score on whether this change is good, because I'm just not sure what they're going to squeeze in there. So if what they squeeze in there, think about like Tron at Magic Kingdom. We didn't really lose anything with Tron. Space Mountain stayed. We lost a walkway between, well, I guess we got the walkway back after it opened. So we didn't really lose much of anything. The Tomorrowland Speedway is still there. The train still goes through. So they were able to weave Tron into a spot in the park that, didn't really impact what people saw. Here, it's like, if they can put something else in this spot that makes Hollywood Studios more engaging and exciting, then I think it was a good change. As far as Rock and Roller Coaster, I mean, I'm a big Aerosmith fan, but the ride either needed to be updated or it needed to be rethemed. Great coaster, good thrill coaster, the whole bit, but they definitely hadn't put the time and energy to update it the way I think they needed to. So that ride definitely needed to be reworked. So
For sure, 100%. Let's back up just a little bit though, because my understanding is that they're putting Monstropolis in that area. So the Monsters Inc. ride is going to go in where Muppets was, and a Monstropolis kind of area, which I think would fit there with the city.
You're right. Yeah,
that they have going on there. I think all of that would fit really well, and I'm excited about that to come. A little Monstropolis.
Yeah, but are they? But I mean, the other side of it, where Mickey's Runaway Railway is, that's staying the same though, because that's the back of that ride, right?
Yeah, I would imagine. So just like, I'm thinking like that courtyard and the street area is what will kind of become Monsters University, maybe. I don't know what it'll be, but it's going to be Monsters themed. However, it will be, and I'm kind of excited about that. So.
Yeah, I'm pulling up on the map. It's still such a small area, but
it's small.
Yeah, they're gonna have
very small.
Yeah, I mean, maybe their plan is to go up, because that's what they did with Tron, to take advantage of the space they had there. But they can also steal from the parking lot behind. They've got employee parking that runs right behind there, so they could steal some of the employee parking lot if they wanted to. Which, I mean, I think is inevitable with all these parks, that they'll turn parking lots into parking garages. Like right now, the expansion of the backside of Magic Kingdom is taking out some of the employee lots that are back behind there. So
yes.
So I guess when you think about all this, you raised this idea with me a handful of weeks ago of
I think months ago, Ed.
And you just sort of airdropped it. You're like, I have a theory, and I'm going to leave it right there for you to pull the string on what your theory is. I think we just to tee this up for folks as well. The other change that sort of weaves into this is the mini Cars experience that was built behind Rock and Roller Coaster also recently got rethemed to a Villains theater show, which I think is a really good show. But I think as you'll probably agree with me on, is an odd fit since they're building a Villains Land in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah. So all of this has come together. I thought a long time ago, when just like you, when Rock and Roller Coaster first went down a year and a half ago, and people were speculating that it would be rethemed as a Muppets, I thought that whole area should be rethemed and they should make a mini Muppet Land. So that's how this started, is that this whole area should kind of be rethemed. And so there's been a whole series of things that I've been looking at as announcements have been made. And I thought, oh, that goes with my theory. That goes with my theory. So the next announcement that was made, like you mentioned, is that there's going to be a villains land in Magic Kingdom, a whole villains area just for villains. And so then when they announced that Muppets was going to be closed and that they would be retheming Rock and Roller Coaster to the Muppets, I thought for sure this is where we were headed. So the first thing that I wanted to do is look at the, so if you pull up that map, the Hollywood Studios map, this is the 2045 project is what I'm calling it. This is the plans that Disney has filed of what their land usage will be by 2045. As you can see, the footprint for Hollywood Studios is not changing at all. It's still the same. And the usage area, so the purple is hotel area, the pink is the parks, blue is water, like nothing is really changing. And so I knew that the footprint would have to stay the same. But when they announced that they were going to be closing Muppet Vision 3D, I also thought that that wouldn't be the end of it, because people love Muppets, and it's not just our generation. I am seeing a resurgence in Gen Z and even younger, because the Muppets are on Disney Plus. And so there's a new level of access to the Muppets that they haven't had before. Our kids haven't necessarily had before. And so I really think that there's a lot more interest in Muppets than what any of us expected. And I think we saw that represented in the reaction and the outpouring of love that happened when the Muppets actually closed. So when they announced that the Villains Theater was coming, or that the Villains Show was coming to Hollywood Studios, I was like, that is weird. Like, that is random. It doesn't fit. And so my hypothesis has been that this is a little bit of a test with the Muppets Theater, because, and just the technology, everything, I think it's all a test. And then that show, if it's successful, will be moved into Villains Land. That's what I think. You and I had talked about, Ed, the lack of people, I guess, in this show. Do you want to touch on that for a little bit?
The villain show or the
Yeah,
Muppet
the villain show. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I have a spoiler alert. I have a friend who's in the cast of the villain show, and so I probably have a little bit of bias to the quality of the show. But I saw the show for the first time a couple months ago, and was definitely impressed with it. I think I had probably lowered my expectations of what I thought going into it, only because it really seemed like it came together quickly, and so I wasn't expecting it to be a great show. You know, the theater itself is a remake of the theater that they were using for a car show that opened, call it, probably just prior to COVID. So call it 5 or 6 years that theater's been there. It's not a very big theater, probably smaller than Mickey Shorts and Muppet Vision by, maybe 20% or 30%. So, definitely not a lot of capacity. But the show itself was a fun show. It's a little bit of an audience participation show. You sort of get to cheer for which villain you think is the worst of the villains. But I think the thing that the show does well, and maybe this is what you were talking about in terms of testing, is it really combines graphic generation, AI generated graphics with characters and some extravagant costumes. And so it's a low budget attraction that involves humans and a bunch of technology to put on a good show that probably doesn't cost them a fortune, because a lot of it can be done via computer and it only needs a cast of 3.
Yes, exactly. So how many actual people are needed for the Muppet Vision 3D?
Well, gosh, I mean, you have 2 for the 2 characters up in the box.
Aren't they animatronics?
I thought some, are they all animatronics? I thought some were still human. Maybe they're all animatronics.
There's one that I know of that is a human that runs across the front, and I can't think of that big guy's name right now.
Yeah.
But that's all I know of. I thought the others were animatronics, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you're right. It's a fairly low number of people, which the villain show is as well. I mean, you got the crew that get loads of people in the seats, but there's only 3 cast members
Yeah.
for that show: Cruella, Captain Hook, and
Maleficent.
Maleficent. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that they're testing. I think they're testing this show format, the technology. And I do think that we will see the Muppets most likely come back to this area, especially after I saw on social media that Jim Henson's son posted somewhere that they did preserve the animatronics for the show. I really think it's going to come back and it'll be a more modernized version, probably some rescripting that stays true to the Muppet format and what we love and know about the Muppets as well. But I think it's going to be an amazing experience. So part of the reason that I started thinking that even more, I was reinforced in my thinking, was because of the announcement that Rock and Roller Coaster was being reimagined into and rethemed into the Muppets. But then when I went and saw the villain show and I walked into that theater, honestly, my first impression was, oh, Muppets. Because on the right side and the left side, there are those balconies, the boxes that we have in the Muppet Vision 3D as well. And so instantly I was like, yeah, this is definitely what's going to happen, is they're going to bring this show back. So
That's interesting. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Do you disagree or agree? What do you think? I would love to hear your thoughts.
I didn't even think about it until you mentioned it, to be honest. When you included the villains screenshots in the stuff to upload for the show, I'm like, geez, I wonder why she's including those in there. I knew we were discussing that geographic area of the park, but didn't even occur to me. I just went and enjoyed the villain show and didn't think anything further about it.
I love to always be thinking about what's coming next for Disney. It's so fun for me. This is my, what do they call it? My Roman Empire.
Well, and we have graphics for how you're designing the next phase of the Roman Empire. So
yeah, so let's look at those graphics for the next phase of the Roman Empire. So currently, if you zoom in on this map, you can see where Rock and Roller Coaster is, and then where the current villain show is, which I am hypothesizing is the future of the Muppet show, the Muppet Vision 3D, or a version of Muppet Vision. There, you can see that they're very close together.
Yep.
They're just separated by a little wall of bushes that could easily be taken down. And then that whole area can become Muppet Plaza, Muppet Land. There's only one area in Hollywood Studios that's called a land, and it's Pixar Land. Every other area is some type of a neighborhood type name. And so that's, I don't know for sure if it's going to be Muppets Plaza, Muppets Land, Muppets Street, Boulevard. It could be anything with Hollywood Studios, but I could see that whole area being rethemed to be Muppets just because of how much people love it. And I think we're seeing a big resurgence of love in our younger generations as well for the Muppets. So why wouldn't Disney want to capitalize on that? It would be so easy to do right there and then bring the Muppets back.
Yeah, I think the other thing about this area geographically, and I don't have a picture handy of it, but there's a back gate right behind this area. Many years ago we used to do VIP tours. This is where we used to come into the park before the villains show was even back in this corner, before there's anything even there, when things ended at Rock and Roller Coaster. And so there's the highway exit there, and some of that area is like wetlands that I don't think is ever going to be developed. But there is a storage area back here.
Yep.
So it's not like there's definitely some power and some water and stuff like that that's in one corner of the area behind, but there actually is an area for expansion back here. There's Hollywood Studios on this side of the park really doesn't have a lot of parking behind any of the stuff. So behind Pixar or behind any of that area. So it's a little tough to get around back here, but there is enough space to carve out more of this area if they wanted to grow it. I think the other thing that was interesting to me when you sent the pictures, and I've never really focused on this, is just how much green space is in front of Tower of Terror. Like, I knew there was green space in between Tower of Terror and the Fantasmic Theater, just because you got that long walk up to the theater. But as you can see in the map that we showed, there's a sizable chunk of trees in front of Tower of Terror, and I think they look great. but they don't necessarily add to the theming of the tower. And as you know, for anybody who's been to Disneyland knows, there's no offset for that tower in Disneyland. You walk right up to the front of it. And a small offset for the queue, but the queue for this ride doesn't need 90% of what's in front of it.
Right. And yes. And I don't know how much of that is meant to be like a visual separation between the Tower of Terror and whatever, because you would want that visual separation to remain intact between the Tower of Terror and Muppets for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. There's plenty of area. I think even where some of those restaurants are down that,
Mhm.
it's a skinny little walkway to
Yeah.
get down into Rock
Oh,
and
for
Roller
sure.
Coaster.
Yeah.
They could expand that out, make a pizza place like they had before, a Muppets themed type restaurant right there, whether it's counter service or a sit down, most likely counter service. But there's 3 little counter service restaurants right there. They could knock that out and include that as Muppets theming as well, I think.
All right. You want my absolutely crazy
Yes.
tinfoil hat conspiracy theory here?
Okay, tell me.
About what I would do from a visibility standpoint. So you know where Disney Junior Play and Dance Theater is? So
Yeah.
like where the mermaid show and stuff. So if you think about it, those are really tall buildings. And they've got, the fronts are painted. Disney Junior is painted on the front. If you think about those fast casuals or grab and goes like Anaheim Produce and stuff like that, that's right on Sunset Boulevard. I'm looking at the Google Maps of this. So I had forgotten there's a parking lot back there. And there's also a bunch of trees that hide the back lot area. But there's a pretty substantial walkway in between the 2 restaurants that goes to behind the scenes. And so my actual thought process here, if I were trying to design things, would be I would probably close the current access into the Rock and Roller Coaster area if you're trying to make a Muppets Land, and make a broader entrance at the intersection of Sunset Boulevard and Prospect Avenue, and steal some back of house space there. And so if you think about the Rock and Roller Coaster Pavilion, you come out of the ride and then you sort of come to a dead end and take your left to go back up to Twilight Zone Tower of Terror.
Yeah.
But if you kept going straight, you would get to the back of Anaheim Produce. And so you could also almost close down this little way and say, if you're going to create a land here, just make Twilight Zone Tower of Terror its own thing.
Yeah.
And then put a billboard up in Muppets Land, like the front of Disney Junior, that creates that visual separation and has, whatever, Muppet stuff on one side and something to do with Tower of Terror on the other side, whether it's a, tree montage or something like that.
I love that idea so much.
You've also got a vertical element there. If you remember, Tower of Terror is kind of up on a hill there.
Uh-huh.
So you don't necessarily need as much visual separation because you're already the top of the tower. You can already see everything in the park. So it's really just people standing in the queue really need to have that suspension of disbelief, which the queue is mostly inside.
Right. Yes, 100%. I love how you've taken my theory and ran with it. That's amazing.
It's your theory, but I'm just playing with maps.
Yes. Yes.
But
Thank you for joining in.
Yeah, but it's like, if you think about it, I don't know if you've ever been there at when Fantasmic dumps out, where they'll sometimes open up Prospect Avenue to you sort of go behind the scenes to cut out of the park.
Yes.
So they've used that side of Prospect Avenue to go behind the scenes. I think it looks like it would be a pretty easy extension to take a little bit of the land behind Hollywood and Vine and Anaheim Produce and make that the entrance to Muppets Land if you were going to make a land back there.
I totally agree. I love that idea so much. And then there'd be room for a little bit more. I think that they need, like if they had a show, they would have one show, one attraction, add in some counter service restaurants, and you've got something similar to Toy Story Land, right? Toy Story Land has 2 attractions, right?
Yeah.
And then food.
3, Toy Story Mania.
Oh yeah, 3. Okay.
Swirling Saucers and
Slinky Dog.
Yeah, the other thing you could do too is when you're talking about theming and reusing existing facilities, if you wanted to put food in Muppets Land, if you open up the backside of where Anaheim Produce and Hollywood and Vine are, you could have another themed restaurant on the backside and share the kitchens.
Yes.
So you've got the facilities already built in there to put a different themed restaurant on the other side of it. It's actually kind of what I thought they should have done with Woody's Lunchbox in the middle of the Toy Story Land. Just create something on the other side of it where the backside of Toy Story Mania is, and create another food option over there, because there's just not enough food options at that end of the park.
Agreed. Or seating.
So here's the question. Do you think that when Rock and Roll Roller Coaster opens in 27, that this comes out then, or do you think that this is further down the road?
I think it's whenever Villains Land opens. So I think
Okay.
this show will either most likely run and until people stop going to see it,
Yeah. Yeah.
or until Villains Land opens. If it's a really popular show, I think we could see it pop back up
Yeah.
in Magic Kingdom. But like I said, I really feel like they're testing things here to see how it goes. I don't think that there's going to be a day, and I might be wrong, but I just really don't think that there's ever going to be a day where we're not going to have live entertainment with full
Yeah.
things like we see in Beauty and the Beast and Nemo and some of those really full cast, incredible shows. They're just so loved and so well attended that I don't think there will be a day when those types of shows go away. I think there's also a place for these types of shows that are super high tech. And even, Muppet Vision 3D was not a big cast. It just wasn't.
Right.
I don't think that there's an either or an or that we have to say, oh no, this is going to be the new way that Disney's going forward. I just don't think that that's how it's going to be.
Well, I for one would say I think I love what they've done with Villains with a small cast. I'm biased because I have a friend that's in the cast, but I think they did. It definitely exceeded my expectations, and as you said, it needs a very small cast of people. So I do hope it lives on in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, me too. I hope that everybody will keep going to the show because that's what decides whether or not it'll go over to Magic Kingdom. I don't think that they would take a show that's highly attended and well loved and not move it over to Villains Land once Villains Land opens, because that would just be one more thing that people would be excited to see.
Yeah, I definitely think this is helping build excitement for the Villains Land in the meantime. But Hollywood Studios has always had this identity crisis. It's sort of like they've got all these different things that are sort of mixed in, and so at some point it feels like Villains needs to move out and be in its proper home.
Yeah, and I think that's part of my wishful thinking here, is that I hope that it's not going to be that disconnected type of an experience where you've got Muppets and Villains next to each other forever, because there are ways that they can move things around to have that theming be more consistent, which we all love that theming.
Yeah.
That's part of what we love about Disney.
Well, I love that you came up with this idea, and we've now got it timestamped to see if you're right. It's going to be a few years before if Disney's patterns hold true, it'll probably be 18 months to 2 years before they announce something like this, if they're going to do it. Would be my guess. Yeah,
I don't think that we'll see an announcement for it for the Muppets coming until Villains Land is open and this show is on its way out.
Yeah.
So I think we're, like you said, I think we're at least 2 years away from an announcement. We do have it timestamped, and so we can bring it back if I'm right. If I'm not, then we'll just slink back into the nethers and pretend that this episode never existed.
Well,
I love hypothesizing. It's super fun.
Well, I hope our listeners and viewers will leave comments and let us know what you guys think. You've seen the maps. You've heard Stephanie's theories on this. Do you think that Muppets are a growing franchise inside Disney World, or do you think that all we're going to get is a rethemed rock and roller coaster?
I would love to hear what people think. And if you disagree with me, please tell me why. I want to hear your thoughts as well. I would love it.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place for us to leave it for today. I hope to see you in a park soon, Steph.
Me too, Ed. I really hope so. Soon. I'm going through withdrawals. It's been a hot minute.
I know it's been a hot minute. Well, I'm Ed Pizza.
I'm Steph Sweets.
You can catch us at the castle.
Do you want me to say it too? You can catch us at the castle.